Alright YouTube, so yes, this will be another Fenty Beauty review. I know a ton of these exist, but here's my deal. I am so tired of this trend that's going on YouTube of having a title and a thumbnail that say things like, worst product ever, cannot believe how bad it is, destroyed my life, my boyfriend left me, I'm pulling out my hair, it killed my cat, makeup reviews. And then you click the review and it's actually, oh okay, yeah, this product is alright, it's okay, keep me on your PR list. I just feel like YouTube is turning into the Facebook Dipley 26 photos on different pages, you know you want to click this clickbait equivalent in the beauty community, and there's just no reason for this. We can do straightforward reviews. We can make a title and a thumbnail that reflect the content of the video, and more so, I want to add to that, seriously, makeup's not that big of a deal, guys. It's really not. It's really not. I've tried a lot of makeup, and I think the worst I can say for it is I haven't liked everything. It didn't work out for me. Sometimes I return products to the store. Sometimes I bought things I really didn't need. That's aggravating, but you know, hype gets you. That's like the worst I can say. I can't really say that anything I've tried in the makeup world has destroyed my life. I can't say that. Point being, I just want to make a straightforward review. I don't have a lot of products to test, because please do bear in mind that I bought this with my own money. I'm not going to make a huge investment at this point. I want to know how the products work first off. However, I definitely was attracted to a specific product that Rihanna released, and that is her Precision Makeup Sponge. I'm very intrigued by this because so far the reviews are saying that this compares extremely well to the Beauty Blender. And if that's true, this is $16, the Beauty Blender is $20. This is a permanent 20% less than the Beauty Blender. And you guys know, replacing those sponges gets expensive. So if this is as good as the Beauty Blender, maybe I'll have found a cheaper option going forward for blending out my foundation. And then I'm also going to test the foundation. I just have a sample, gotta say that up front. This is in the shade 150. This also has a lot of hype, and I really will say I'm very proud of Fenty Beauty for doing such a thorough line of skin options, different skin tones, different skin colors. She really nailed this. I hope other cosmetics companies take note, because this is extremely well done, and it's why I can't possibly criticize anything else about the line. I've heard people saying there's not enough other makeup, there's no lipsticks or whatever. She spent a lot of effort on this, and I appreciate it. I hope other companies take note, I really do. Benefit Cosmetics, looking at you. Okay, so let's get into testing these products. I will tell you guys right now, I've heard that this foundation oxidizes, so we'll definitely do a wear test in this video. This is a very high silicone foundation, so I already have laid down a silicone primer, went with the Smashbox Photo Finish Primer, a classic. And then this sponge says that you can use it damp for buildable coverage or dry for full coverage. I'm going to go ahead and use it damp because that's what I'm most familiar with. I've really never found the dry thing works for me, but I do have dry skin, so I guess that could be an option if you are a bit more oily skinned than I am. My goal with this sponge is to compare it to the Beauty Blender. So I do have the nude Beauty Blender out, and then I have the new Rihanna sponge. It came out of the package a little bit crinkled, if you could see that, but I'm sure that won't be an issue. So it looks to be a little bit smaller than the Beauty Blender. However, this is an old Beauty Blender, so it's probably a little bit inflated. They just seem to inflate permanently and never go back to quite their small size. So I'm going to go ahead and wet both of these just so we can do a comparison, but then I'll be using this one. I will, at first glance, say I'm a little confused by the tip. This is a very familiar idea to me. I use that to get right up under my eyes. I wonder if this is going to take a little bit of getting used to. We'll see. I am really excited so far. I just wet these guys, and it was exactly like using the same sponges. I can't believe they inflated at the same rate. They currently feel the exact same. They're pretty much the same size. This is looking really good so far, and I do want to tell you guys, I've been on this quest for a long time. I'll tell you guys what compares to the Beauty Blender in my mind so far. And so far the closest thing is going to be the Real Technique sponge. I do not at all like the Ulta sponge. Some people have compared it. I think it is absolutely horrible in comparison. So this holds a lot of promise at this point. I'm going to go ahead and start with foundation so we can see if it's very similar or not. Okay, so I got the foundation out. It says on it to shake well, so I already did shake it. I'm impressed that they made a sample that actually contains a pump. Fenty Beauty, that is so kind of you. Alright, I'm going to do 3 pumps on my face, and I'm going to start with a foundation brush and then blend it out with a sponge. Alright guys, here it goes. So I actually needed to go back in for a little more of the foundation, which means I'm now at 4 pumps, and I think that's just because the sponge seems to be sucking up a bit more of the product than I would like it to, but in fairness, in absolute fairness, every new beauty blender does that. And over time, they seem to, I hate to say it because it sounds gross, but I think they retain a little bit of foundation no matter how much you wash them. So I'm still thinking that this is behaving a lot like the beauty blender. I also initially thought that this was going to be weird to use under my eyes, but it's actually not. This is a little softer than the Beauty Blender. Again, that might be because it's new, but I feel like I can very easily squeeze all the way through, which is kind of nice in some aspects. I think it's what's helping me out with blending right around here and also right around my nose. The shape seems to be working really well. And then you still have the big side to blend out everything else. And then the flat side works really well on your forehead and reminds me of the Real Technique sponge. I'm liking it. I'm liking it a lot so far. I'm not sure on how soft it is. I'm a little hesitant on that, but I'm definitely willing to keep testing it. I mean, I can't say it's a con. It just feels different from the Beauty Blender. Okay guys, so I think this foundation is rather pretty on. I went and put on some lip gloss, and by the time I came back to you guys, please realize I have not set this with powder yet. I'm beginning to see it kind of creasing, which means it's a little bit more full coverage than I expected it to be. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is set this with a pressed powder, my Lucidity powder, and then I'll come back to you guys later and report back. I don't see massive oxidation happening. It does seem that it's blending in a little better with my skin as time goes by. It did apply light, but it's only like a half a shade of oxidation at most at this point. So I'm going to set this with powder. I'm going to go and run some errands for the day, and I'll report back in 5 or 6 hours. And then there's the with powder look, just so you guys can have a proper comparison before I'm back. It's been about 4.5 hours with this foundation on, and I'm calling it quits. I have decided where I stand with this foundation. I don't hate it, but I don't think I'm going to be buying the full size. So I want to first talk about the oxidation deal. What I noticed with this is it did seem to darken about 1/2 to 3/4 of a shade very quickly, within 15 minutes after applying. Now, to me, that's oxidation. Fenty Beauty says that's not, that it is just showing its true color. I don't know. I will say I applied this foundation over a silicone primer, which should prevent oxidation, so maybe they're onto something. I'm not really sure what could be going on, but I definitely would not immediately buy the color that matches your skin without letting it sit on your skin for at least 15 minutes. But that said, I am very pleased with the color. I think it was a very good match. I got a little lucky in that aspect. I like it a lot. I think that if you're pretty good at guessing your foundation, you still might be able to, because that was my deal. I looked at this being 150 neutral. I thought, okay, that seems a little light, but if these claims are true, it should work out perfectly, and it did. So it holds true to what I guess at when I'm guessing online. As far as how this foundation wears, bear in mind this is called the Pro Filt'r Soft Matte Longwear Foundation, and I think that is the perfect name for this foundation. When I first put this on, I did not really like how it looked for about a solid 2 hours. It was very cakey, and when I look in the mirror, I, even now, still see it emphasizing pores, fine lines, dry patches, but I have this feeling that you're not able to see it as well on camera. And I think what's going on with this, the way it applied reminds me a lot of photography and movies, the way that you apply a kind of thick and cakey looking foundation that doesn't look that good in real life, but it looks amazing in photos. I think that's what's going on. This is almost like an Instagram filter foundation. Nobody looks on Instagram how they look in real life, and I feel like that's what's going on here. I don't like how this looks in real life, but I just have this feeling it looks great in photos. And I feel like this may end up being a really excellent option for anybody looking for a photography foundation. It doesn't have any SPF to offset that and make that white cast. I think this might be a really good use for this. Now, at that 2-hour mark, I did start to like it a little more. I think that's because that's when a little bit more of my natural oils started to mix into the foundation. I am more dry-skinned than I am oily, but I do still have some bit of combination skin, and that's why I think at that mark I did start to like it a bit more, which makes me think that if you have combination or oily skin, this foundation might end up working out really well for you, because once it does do that mixing, it will start to smoothen out a lot more. On that same note though, I can't say I would recommend this for dry skin, and that's not terribly surprising. It is called a soft matte. Mattes are not the best foundation option for dry skin. Yes, I could probably mix this with oil and like it more from the get-go, but I'm not really sure I want to buy a foundation that I consistently have to work with in order to make it work for me. I would much rather buy what in my mind, to me personally, is a 5-star foundation and just go with it. Day is done, let's do this, then have to worry about how to fix the foundation. So ultimately what I think is that if you are more on the dry skin side, I don't think you will love this foundation. If you're more on the oily side, I think this might actually work out really well. And of course, I really do think this will look great in photos. So I'm going to spend the most time talking about the Fenty Beauty sponge. What I noticed in reading the reviews is that people have a tendency to compare that sponge to the other sponges that they're familiar with, that they prefer, and I will tell you guys, all of these sponges that I'm holding up are all a little bit different. So this one is the Fenty Beauty sponge, up next is the Beauty Blender Nude, this is the Real Technique sponge, and this is the Ulta sponge. In terms of comparison, I'm going to say that this is arranged softest to hardest. The Fenty Beauty sponge is definitely very, very flexible, very soft, very easy to bend. The Beauty Blender, which has always been my standard, is a very, very soft sponge, but as you can see, it's not quite as bendable rather as the Fenty Beauty sponge. And I think that could either be a pro or a con, because yes, it does help to give that beautiful, almost airbrush type of finish, but I'm a little concerned that it might not last too long, and I'll get more into that later. Compared to the Real Technique sponge, which is a little bit harder than the Beauty Blender, not terribly so. I think it is a perfect Beauty Blender alternative if you're on a budget. But it definitely is a little bit more firm. It's a little bit more like using a traditional wedge sponge, but not completely. Obviously, it's like if you mix together a wedge sponge along with the Beauty Blender, you get something similar to this. Obviously, in shape, it does have a lot of comparison, but it does have a very, in my mind, it's a much more significant difference between these two than these two. And then, of course, if you're more familiar with the Ulta type of sponges, these are much more hard. These are kind of sponges that you can get pretty much anywhere, usually for $5 or under. These are a lot more firm. They don't really give the same finish, in my mind, that the other 3 sponges give. I think if you're familiar with this type of sponge, this is going to be a very, very big leap over to the Fenty Beauty sponge. Now, I had initially expressed some concern about the shape of this sponge, particularly the tip of this. This is not a problem. I think it's not a problem because of how much it bends. I didn't have any issue at all with getting up under my eye. It worked actually quite similarly to this. In spite of how different they look, it worked really well. I do also like the variety of sides that you get with this sponge. I think that if you like using the Real Technique sponge specifically for this side, this might actually be something that you really do enjoy about this sponge. Obviously, the Beauty Blender doesn't have that. It's never bothered me, but I will say I really liked having that option on the Fenty Beauty sponge. I keep almost calling it the Rihanna sponge, like it has her face on it. How weird would that be? What I am going to tell you guys right now about this sponge is I'm a little hesitant to recommend it, only because I'm very concerned that it might not last as long as the Beauty Blender. And to me, the Beauty Blender lasts me about 3 to 4 months. This being $4 cheaper, it still should last me the same amount of time. So I figure what I'm going to do, I like it enough to continue using it, absolutely. If it rips or breaks somehow on me within the 60-day return period policy of Sephora, it's going to go back and I will not repurchase it. However, if it does last, if I feel like it lasts the 3 to 4 months, this might actually replace the Beauty Blender for me. I will say I really like the Beauty Blender company. If I can find sales, it's gonna be a hard toss-up. But I like the fact that this is accessible and saves me a little bit of money. I like all of these ideas. I don't think I'm going to grab for this over the Beauty Blender. I still have that concern about time passing and this ripping. But overall, I like it. I'm just a little hesitant to recommend it until I can really tell you, hey, this has lasted me for 3 or 4 months, and I'm very satisfied with the length of time it has lived. Alright, YouTube, so that is my review of these select Fenty Beauty products. I gotta say, overall, I'm pretty impressed with the line. I give this a 4 stars, even if it's not the best foundation for me. I think it's a solid foundation. I give this potentially 5 stars, depending on how long it lasts. I like it. I might want to try more stuff from this line. I really like what Rihanna's done. I love that these products are affordable, which is something I didn't mention. This is $16. The full size of this is $34. That's amazing. This line is priced quite reasonably, and I'm impressed with the quality. So thanks so much for watching this video today, you guys. If you liked this video, please do give it a thumbs up. Make sure you hit subscribe, and peace out, YouTube.